should be a stimulating, thought-provoking, hopefully action-inspiring event. I'm Lloyd Gray, Executive Director of the Phil Hardin Foundation, and on behalf of the Children's Foundation of Mississippi, thank you for taking the time to join us today as we examine Mississippi's untapped potential when it comes to early learning and high-quality child care. And if you'll look at the map on the screens behind me, you can see that we truly have a statewide gathering today. That indicates where you all have come from. So thank you for making that effort. Whether you are a policymaker, a business person, an educator, a nonprofit leader, or just an interested citizen, everyone here has a major stake, both short-term and long-term, in what we'll be talking about today. Early childhood education is one of the Phil Hardin Foundation's top grant-making priorities, and the data are very clear that early learning and brain development are extremely important to later school success, which in turn leads to long-term employability when children grow up. That's the long-term benefit. But high-quality child care, which by definition always includes a strong educational component, has immediate benefits as well by giving parents the capacity, the flexibility, and the peace of mind to be productive members of the workforce, knowing that their children are learning and are well cared for. This event represents a coming together of business leaders and the nonprofit and philanthropic sector in Mississippi to raise awareness of these facts and hopefully to generate momentum to make early learning and high-quality child care an even higher priority in policy decisions at both the state and local levels. The Hardin Foundation is proud to help sponsor this summit. I want to personally thank Linda Southward of the Children's Foundation for being the driving force behind this event. Linda is, as many of you know, a powerhouse, and whatever she undertakes, she will do with great energy and devotion. A couple of years ago, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, in partnership with the Mississippi Economic Council, released a Mississippi study that determined that a shortage of high-quality child care in Mississippi results in an annual loss to Mississippi's economy of $673 million. Last spring, I think Linda and Scott Waller, CEO of the MEC, had been plotting to ways to come together and use this study and others that demonstrate similar findings, maybe not in the dollar tangible values, but certainly in the necessity of better child care and early learning in Mississippi. They were trying to figure out a way to use it to elevate this issue and to raise awareness of the importance of the issue of early childhood and child care and their critical importance in our state. And out of Linda's prodding, which included their visit over to talk with me at the Hardin Foundation, came the idea for this summit. And she and the Children's Foundation have brought us to this moment. Today's event is built around the idea that the convergence of business, the philanthropic and nonprofit sector, and public policy makers, that convergence has the potential to catch hold around issues of early childhood, just as it did in our sister state of Alabama, which we will hear more about later this morning. So thank you to Linda, to Scott, to Dave Dennis, the chair of the board of the Children's Foundation, to Cindy Walker, who has worked hard with Linda to pull this event together, and to all of the sponsors who are listed on your program for making this summit possible. I hope we will all leave here today better informed and highly motivated for positive action. Before I introduce our first speaker, there's a group here that I'd like to recognize, the Graduate Center for the study of early learning at the University of Mississippi is led by one of the longtime stalwarts and champions of early childhood issues in Mississippi, Dr. Kathy Grace. She's here today with some of the committed early childhood teacher educators who make up the Phil Hardin Scholars under Kathy's direction at Ole Miss, and I'd like for those Hardin Scholars who are here to please stand and be recognized. Thank you to all of you for all that you do to equip early childhood educators to better serve our children and families in Mississippi. And now to kick off our programming today, it's my pleasure to introduce Kuna Tavalin, who is the Senior Early Childhood Advisor with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. Kuna has 18 years of experience in public affairs, advocacy, and strategic planning in the early childhood, education, and human services arena. Kuna focuses on federal policy encompassing appropriations in education from birth through higher education and professional development. She began her career working in the U.S. Senate on issues of education, particularly early childhood education, poverty, transportation, and the judicial system. Kuna holds a bachelor's degree from Brandeis University and a master's from Smith College. And I would also add that she is certainly personally invested in this issue. She has 2 children, ages 3 and 5. And she, also something you need to know about her, she's a native of Vermont, but she has never been farther south than Huntsville, Alabama until today. And so she's been to the Deep South, but not the really Deep South. And so we're glad to have you with us today, Kuna. She's here today to share the national data on child care, what drove the U.S. Chamber to look into this data, and why Mississippi was chosen as one of 4 states to study in greater depth. Please welcome, with a Deep South welcome, Kuna Tavalin.
Well, now that you know a little bit more about me, thank you for that introduction, and it's really quite a genuine pleasure to be here today. It's exciting. I know that this event is a long time coming, so congratulations for finally getting it together. Obviously, we've all had quite a few roadblocks over the last couple of years, but it's really great to see so many stakeholders from so many different places here today. So as you know, I'm here on behalf of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. So my goal today is really to help explain why the foundation and the chamber are so invested in early childhood education and the business community as well. So over the last handful of years, the foundation has been doing a lot of work surveying families, looking in depth at situations in specific states, surveying businesses, communicating with businesses. A lot of businesses have been coming to us saying, what can we do to support our workforce? And so today I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about that work. I want to just set the stage. I know that it's already been set pretty well, that when we talk about childcare, we're talking about a 0 to 5 system. We're not talking about just watching children. We're talking about it in relation to early childhood education, development. It includes preschool. It includes really the full spectrum of 0 to 5 services for children. So I'm going to go over some of the work we've done to date, but I do want to note, as you all know, our most recent work really has a pandemic tone to it, right? Because we're polling families in real time, and we're in the middle of a pandemic. A lot of these issues are bubbling up because of challenges that have been heightened through COVID-19. But in a lot of ways, it's also provided a much clearer picture of what kinds of challenges families face, right? Because they are in the heat of one of the most challenging moments they're probably going to face in their lives, hopefully, in terms of childcare. And so it's really lifted the curtain on what it looks like for families. So The Chamber Foundation began building the business case for investments in high quality childcare with the release of its 2017 report, Workforce of Today, Workforce of Tomorrow. And so that's where I want to begin. I want to explain why this is important for the workforce of today, our current workers, and also tomorrow in a little bit more depth. So starting with our current workforce, why is childcare so essential? Before the pandemic, we really saw how breakdowns and barriers to high quality, affordable childcare negatively impact working families and economies. Childcare enables 14 million parents to participate in the workforce. And those are parents with young children. But it's also important to note that prior to the pandemic, our workforce was not at full capacity, and childcare plays into that. So 1 in 2 working parents say the decision to leave the workforce was due to a lack of childcare services and supports. Working fathers between the ages of 18 and 36 are more likely to say they're willing to change jobs or careers to better manage work-life balance. And what's more, 1/3 of highly educated and skilled women are dropping out of the workforce after having children, and 74% of them, so 3/4 of them, point to childcare as their deciding factor. And then when you layer that onto the fact that replacing an employee can cost companies up to 150% of that individual's salary, right, you're really looking at some pretty serious workforce challenges during those early childhood parenting years. But on the flip side, when families have access to high quality, affordable childcare, that barrier to employment is lifted for so many families, and this is particularly important for working women. And when parents can provide for their young children with an affordable, high-quality early learning environment, when childcare complications are not at the forefront of their minds, they can focus their attention and maximize their output at work. So access to affordable, high-quality childcare in those early years is really critical to the productivity and participation of the workforce. And then we'll flip gears and we'll talk about the workforce of tomorrow, our babies and children. So there's no doubt, right? It's indisputable that education is key to, success in the workplace and beyond. And we know now that that education is not starting at kindergarten or first grade. This starts at birth, right? We have a tremendous volume of brain science that shows how the brain begins to develop right away and the importance of interacting in the early childhood space. So from birth to 5, children are learning at an extraordinary rate, one of the most extraordinary rates in a person's lifetime. So when babies are babbling, now we know, that's building early literacy skills, early language skills. When kids are dropping their food on the ground and you're picking it up and they're dropping it again, right? That's early science. When your 4-year-old says, "Hey, how come he got 7 toys and I only got 3, right?" Okay, it's fine. But also, that's math, right? They're quantifying. They're learning how to figure things out. And when kids in the early childhood space, when they're fighting and they have to figure out a resolution, or when they're learning how to share, or learning how to be polite and responsive, right? Those are the skills you can't teach a 20-year-old. Those are the skills that keep adults who have jobs in the workforce and productive. And those are the skills that advance people through the workforce, right? Those early childhood skills are really critical building blocks for the rest of a person's trajectory. So high quality childcare settings, what they do, we're not just watching kids anymore. They're interacting, they're building those skills, they're helping with the development of those skills so that children in that 0 to 5 space really can develop. And that ensures that kids are ensuring that kids are getting the early childhood education and development necessary to create lifelong foundation for learning. And so that is why we view early childhood as a two-generation workforce issue, right? For children to get that really strong foundation, for adults to fully participate in the workforce. And when employers and for employers and the economy to function at the best rate to fully function. So that's why we, along with the rest of the country, I think it's fair to say, have seen childcare go from this really niche issue or this personal issue to really a business issue and a workforce issue and a national issue, frankly. So we've seen the idea of childcare and the idea of providing supports and benefits really become a primary concern for businesses. So in December 2020, the Chamber Foundation released Piecing Together Solutions. So this is a report about the importance of childcare to businesses and to families. And the report digs deeper into what goes into the decision-making process around childcare. How do families decide what the best approach is or what the most necessary approach is for their family? We call it the childcare equation, and it has 5 components. Work responsibilities, what is your hour, your schedule, how flexible is it, what do you need to do in the workplace in order to keep your job and do a good job, right? The home environment, who in the house can take care of the children, how close are you to options that are available in the community, and so on. Finances, this is often the driving decision-making factor. And it's not just how much do we make, how much can we afford, but oftentimes it is, does it make sense for me to spend my whole paycheck on childcare, or does it make more sense for me to step out of the workforce? We see that decision a lot with women specifically. And then community options, what's available? What's available, does it align with maybe an elementary school child's schedule? Does it align with work schedules? Can we make this work in some way? And then finally is family composition. Do we have people in our family who can help support us with our childcare needs? Spouses, partners, extended family, friends, who's available to help us with childcare. So those are the real 5 kind of key pillars of the childcare equation. And of course, these variables were really amplified by the pandemic. So just one example, in 2020, enrollment on average in childcare centers was down 67%. So where were those kids? Well, I'll tell you that mine definitely Zoom bombed a number of important meetings, and locking the door doesn't always work because then they pound on it, right? So for folks who were lucky enough to work from home, oftentimes we had young children creating chaos in the background. And for others, there were much more serious challenges where people simply could not work because they did not have care. So in mid to late 2020, the Chamber Foundation conducted a series of surveys, we do this a lot, to see what the realities of the pandemic were in terms of the childcare equation. So I'm gonna share a few of our statistics. 2/3 of working parents had changed their childcare arrangement due to COVID-19, and nearly a year into the pandemic, the majority had yet to find a permanent solution. And now, if you also keep into consideration that so many childcare facilities had shut down, that really makes a lot of sense. Parents left the workforce due to a lack of any childcare options at a much faster rate than businesses had anticipated. I don't think the gravity of this challenge was really as visible until the pandemic started, right? And folks are really forced to make some hard decisions. And 11% of working parents had turned down a new job or a promotion just because of lack of childcare. Half parents who had left the workforce since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic cited childcare as the reason for that decision. And then, of course, the most extreme effect of childcare barriers is a parent, usually a mother, fully dropping out of the workforce due to lack of childcare options or lack of affordable options. But for parents who are able to solve the childcare equation in a way that allows them to remain in the workforce, there are still interruptions, missed work days, shortened work days, the stress of shifting childcare accommodations more frequently during the pandemic, and so on and so forth. So even where there was childcare, it was still sometimes very erratic. And of course, all of these breakdowns, they impact productivity, recruitment and retention. So really acute challenges for the business community. So as has been mentioned, just before the pandemic, in February of 2020, the Chamber Foundation released a series of untapped potential reports focusing on 4 states: Idaho, Iowa, Pennsylvania, and of course, this very welcoming and beautiful state right here of Mississippi. And the research briefs showed that 4 states were losing a combined $3 billion in economic potential due to breakdowns in childcare. And I know that the data for Mississippi has already been explained, but just to break down that $637 million into smaller pieces, $120 million annually was lost in potential or untapped tax revenue, and $553 million was due to Mississippi employers enduring absences and turnovers and other things that are tied directly to breakdowns in childcare. So really expensive for the business community. And there are a couple more noteworthy findings from that report that I want to highlight. More than 3/4 of families surveyed for the Mississippi Untapped Potential Report rely on family members for childcare. And more than 40% of parents delayed education and training opportunities because of breakdowns in childcare. In late 2021, we did a second cohort of studies. We did 6. We released 6: Alaska, Arkansas, Arizona, Missouri, Texas, and West Virginia. And not surprisingly, the results were more grim. And of course, that's linked to the pandemic, but the untapped potential was even more, even greater. And as I've said maybe 6 times already this morning, the impact was really disproportionately endured by women. So we know that childcare impacts when, how, whether, and where parents are able to return to work. And the business community has a large role to play in the solutions to childcare challenges. The Foundation's executive brief, Essential Care for Essential Workers, was released also in 2021, and it's a roadmap for senior leadership to understand what options are available to address childcare needs for frontline working parents. This focuses primarily on shift workers, but a lot of the takeaways are really universal. So I just want to say that the brief was created because we had employers of every size and sector reaching out to us constantly to say, what can we do to support our employees with children right now? According to a 2021 Foundation survey, 89% of employers are looking for solutions because their employees have been greatly impacted by breakdowns in the system. The same survey underscores the widespread recognition of this challenge. So a couple more stats for you. 50% of parents who had not returned back to work cited childcare as the reason. 1 in 5 working parents were unsure if they could return to their pre-COVID work situation. 16% of employers have experienced employees leaving their jobs altogether because of a lack of childcare. But the good news is the solutions for business are wide-ranging and can positively impact both employers and employees. The brief identifies 3 categories. One is the quick wins. So that means looking to see if you can provide flexible scheduling that creates some kind of reliability and predictability so you can schedule regular childcare. Internal investments. That means maybe considering providing backup care so that when families find themselves in emergency situations in a bind in the morning with no childcare, they can still come to work. And community investments. That can include public advocacy around addressing childcare issues, and so much more, helping build local capacity. And the most immediate step that employers can take to support their employees and to create an inclusive culture for working parents, this is the easiest step, and it's often the step that is overlooked. And that is just simply asking your employees what they need, what their challenges are. Right? We found a lot of businesses have really benefited from just opening the lines of communications with their employees. And it's important because sometimes a business will solve a problem that doesn't exist. We don't want, if most employees can't afford childcare, then work from home days aren't really addressing that, and nobody is getting what they need. So opening those lines of communication is a really simple starting point. When we take a step back from business and look at the system as a whole, like you're doing today here, there are some key considerations to keep in mind. First, needs may vary by region. So really take a close look at what your regional needs are, and not just as statewide needs. Family choice is really key. No parent wants to be told what they should be doing with their children, right? So providing options that include home-based care, center-based care, pre-K, allowing space for some families to make the personal decision to step aside from the workforce and come back, right? All of those things are really important. There has to be a diverse set of flexible options in order to meet the needs of all families. And any system, to be truly effective, it must also address all of the pillars of access, affordability, and quality, because those are the three keys to really making a successful system. And of course, a successful early childhood system is really imperative to having a strong workforce and a strong economy.